Oh, welcome back to the Sportsball Podcast, your source for sports. I am Nate, alongside my co-hosts Andy and Zach. Welcome back to another episode. This week we have football, and more football. Baseball might be happening, but there's football happening.
We can confirm that baseball is happening. The problem is, that's it. We just know it's happening.
The World Series has not happened, and we are not currently on the express track to the World Series, so football is happening at the moment.
We'll pick it up in the playoffs.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. We'll see. Stay tuned.
We'll mention it.
To all of our loyal MLB supporters, we might cover for you. That's a half guarantee. But anyways, the NFL season did officially kick off kind of last week. We started off the season with the Ravens and the Chiefs, which was pretty much lived up to the bill. We were expecting two of the top teams in the AFC going at it, and you never know what exactly to expect in that first just few weeks, honestly, of the NFL. A lot of teams are still getting the conditioning now and figuring things out, just kind of getting to gel together. But overall, that Chiefs-Ravens game, lived up to the expectations. Two of those really good teams. You got Lamar Jackson versus Patrick Mahomes, and I mean, there was a decent amount of offense. 47 points scored between the two of them, and it was honestly a really, really close game for the majority of it. So it was a good kind of ease back in intro to the NFL. We'd all been longing for some football to return, different product from college, and it was cool to see. And then Zach followed it up by destroying Jordan Love's career on Friday night in Brazil. So
hey, hold on.
On career.
I would like to point out I didn't do any of that. I just so happened to cheer for the team that tackled him that may have ended his career. I'm not saying I'm cheering for injuries, because no one wants to see a quarterback go down like that. However,
Tricks. There's one quarterback.
If you do mathematics here, yes, technically I did it, if you will.
I do mathematics, so
rude.
I think we gotta send this clip into Roger and let him see for himself.
Nah. Nope.
But then the remainder of the regular NFL weekend, all the games on Sunday, Red Zone was back. We got a nice switching hour there for a while, so it was overall a good football weekend. Good return to glory, if you will. We ended with an overtime game on Sunday night with the Rams and Lions, which was kind of ended up a little anticlimactic, but Lions did end up winning that game. But overall, I mean, we're back. Like I said, first week or two of NFL season's always kind of a wash, but it was exciting to just see the teams play. And I don't know about you guys, I have a couple of vested fantasy football interests, so it was nice and stressful and exciting to get back into that swing. So I'll pass it on to you guys if you have any games that stood out or plays that stood out or anything you'd like to talk about.
Yeah. I mean, I'm only mentioning this because this also obviously encompasses my team. But the generalized, how were all the rookie quarterbacks going to fare week one? And some probably expected it, some probably didn't expect it. I mean, if you were to take it just the hype of how they were drafted versus how they were actually going to perform in the NFL, it probably lived up to what you thought starting true rookie quarterbacks were going to do week one of the NFL season. Is just not well in a sense. I mean, between the three starters were Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, and Bo Nix, and not really a single one of them played better than the other. One of the teams only won, and that's because their defense and the Bears helped Caleb Williams technically win the game. But outside of that, they
didn't just help him.
Well, they did win the game.
They carried him through that game. Let's be clear what that is.
Yes. But yeah, the rookies quarterbacks looked like rookies, and then in a sense, week one of the NFL season, and that's kind of what you expected. So obviously you can't take what they did week 1 and say, oh, this is how they're going to do the rest of the season. I mean, there's still 16 more games they have to play. So at the end of the season, they might come into their form. They might not. It just kind of depends on how the season goes. But that was kind of the bigger storyline, was how things were going to go Sunday for the rookie quarterback starting. But yeah, like you said, Nate, a lot of good games. I mean, the primetime games, I think, lived up to everything that they were, except probably Monday Night Football, but that was kind of expected when you brought the Jets on to play the reigning NFC champs with that. So the bigger storyline with that,
Aaron Rodgers actually played the game.
He did. He did actually survive the game for now. We'll see how the rest of the season goes. But, and then you kind of look at, if you're looking at it from a fantasy standpoint of injuries, I mean, some of the bigger names injuries are still kind of prevalent. Christian McCaffrey was out week 1, is going to be out week 2. Puka Nacua,
IR candidate, apparently.
AR or IR. Puka Nacua already went to IR. And then obviously the bigger story that happened last night with the Dolphins and Bills. To take that game out of face value, Bills looked better than I think most people were expecting, considering what they traded away in the offseason in terms of wide receivers and, running backs. They just kind of ran over all the Dolphins. So the Dolphins also might not be as good as we thought either, but the Bills looked pretty darn good last night. But the bigger storyline of that was obviously Tua and the concussion that he suffered yet again for technically, I think, the third official diagnosis that he's had in the NFL, but I think he's had about maybe 4 or 5 total. And so that's going to be a big issue the rest of the NFL coming weeks of determining what's going to happen with him. And is he kind of going to get pushed to like, hey, maybe you shouldn't be playing football anymore. Maybe you can go play the flag football Olympic team type thing. It's definitely a prevalent story because it's, if we remember 2 years ago, just how bad those concussions looked on Tua when they did happen. And last night was no different. He kind of did that instant right arm clutch, hand gesture, fist thing, whatever that the scientific nature. I don't know what the scientific name of it is, but I know
that's what it is.
It's not good. It's basically the body's reaction to when you lose consciousness to your whole body. It's just, that's kind of like the instant reaction that happens. And the announcers knew it right away. The players, on-field people knew right away, like, oh, here we go again with Tua.
And Tua always just looks really, like, I'm not going to sit here and be like, ooh, that guy looks good when he gets a concussion. But like Tua, every time he's gotten one, has just looked almost like exercising a demon in a way. Last night's wasn't as bad as like the previous ones he's had, where like I remember the one where he like spazzed out real hard. That one was bad. Yesterday's was bad too, but it's just like you see that and you're like, that's not good. Like, you're not supposed to do that at all.
So that's going to be a very big issue. Obviously for the Dolphins going forward is, they're probably not going to rely on Skylar Thompson to lead them the rest of the way. I would not be surprised to try to bring some veteran quarterback in through whatever avenues they want to bring him through. But that's probably going to be the Dolphins' biggest storyline now the rest of the season is what happens with Tua. Is he going to retire, like medically retire? Is he going to get kind of pushed towards it? Is he still going to try to play with a guardian cap? Who knows anymore? But yeah, overall, in terms of just week 1 football, it was a good back into football resurgence. Like you had said, Nate, all those primetime games were just, very close games down to the wire between the top pick teams that are probably going to be better this year. They were games that we expected them to come down to last drives or last second plays. The Ravens were literally an inch or two away from probably winning the game because when they cut to John Harbaugh on the sideline, he was pointing for 2. So he wasn't going to kick the field goal to tie that game. He was going to go try to win the game. And rightfully so. Why would you give Patrick Mahomes another possession to try to win the game when you have a chance to beat him on a 2-point conversion? So outside of my team, I thought things were fun Sunday. Just having a full slate of football and kind of getting back into the groove of routine of, yes, we now have Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday football games again. And then if you're a true sicko like most of us are, you get matching games now going forward.
Heck yeah.
Hell yeah. So it was a fun slate. Can't wait to see the rest of the season unless Denver just decides to tank. Then I will be putting all my chips into the Matt Rule basket of happiness.
I mean, at the moment, it's a pretty good.
That's a good one to put it into.
It's a really good one to put it into. So it's going reasonably better than I expected.
I think that's a fair. I mean, we'll get to that obviously, but I think that's a fair assessment of the Nebraska Cornhuskers right now for us. Nate, I'll let you. I was gonna say I'll let you put your.
I didn't have too much NFL wise to add. The game that most shocked me was the Bengals losing to the Patriots. Yeah, I don't know if you guys saw the Joe Burrow, discourse of not being able to
the wrist
water bottle.
So yeah, that was my favorite thing to come out of this last weekend. Was apparently the beat reporters for Cincinnati were asking him. I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago. People noticed that you're picking up your water bottle weird. And he goes, I was. And then they showed a video of it. And I'm like, what? That's how I lift my water bottle up. And my wrist is fine. What are we talking about here?
And the only reason I have any kind of
the only reason I have any kind of vested interest in this is because it's my fantasy quarterback. So way to not live up to your reputation, Sir Joe. That's really upsetting.
Yes, it was. It was surprising and it wasn't surprising, given the fact that I know probably there's more advanced stats on this, but the Bengals always have started slow the first couple weeks under Zach Taylor. I think they were maybe 1-11 or 1-12 or something like that. The first in Zach Taylor's career as a Bengals head coach, those first 2 or 3 weeks of the NFL season, he has 1 or 2 wins. So it's not surprising in the sense that if history repeats itself, this is what the Bengals always start and do. And then they eventually just emerge as the season goes on, and then they get into the playoffs, and it's the Bengals are a team to contend with. So it's surprising that they did lose and they just didn't look as good, even though Jamar Chase was playing, and yet we thought a fully healthy Joe Burrow was back. Maybe he's not. But if you look at the history of it, and it's this is what the Bengals always do. They'll pick it up in week 3 and just go about business as usual. So this weekend and probably week 3 of what the Bengals do will probably be the really telltale. And I don't know how much you can take away from this weekend because they play Kansas City this week. So it's if you lose to Kansas City, it's it's Kansas City. So can you really take that much away either?
But then they start 0-2, and then
right.
I mean, the thing is
the odds of getting to the Super Bowl when you start 0-2 go down to 4% or even 1%. So that's either the Super Bowl or the playoffs, one of the two. But your chances of going to the postseason or winning the postseason just dramatically drop if you start 0-2.
Yeah, it turns out not having 82 or more games in a season makes it tough to, starting 0-2 is really hard in football when you only have
so many games.
17 games, or 18 or whatever they're at now.
Right. But yeah, we'll see how they do against Kansas City this week. T. Higgins is probably not going to play again, so the Bengals are probably going to run out what they did last time, but who knows? And I don't know how much of their offense changed without having Joe Mixon either. I only watched it on Red Zone, so whatever Scott Hansen showed me of that game, but I don't know how their running game looked with Devin Singletary. But
wasn't Zach Moss their running back too?
Moss, whoever's leading that backfield now.
I mean, he had an all right game. I have him also in my fantasy team. So this is and I was at a golf tournament, so I didn't get to watch too much actual football. So I was just using that as my basis. Did they have a good day? He had an all right day. It wasn't it wasn't a shocking to the world kind of thing. But then I think they said that he's basically the starting back going forward, at least currently. So. Speaking of, though, I think the breaking news that came before, I'm sure you guys saw it too, but the breaking news is that Christian McCaffrey will not be playing on Sunday, and they're considering putting him on short-term IR or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't blame him. I'd also be facing the Minnesota defense on Sunday.
That's not it.
That's it. That's the streets
are
saying it, and
you cannot take anything away from that game.
Wait. Are we saying the Giants might not be back?
Hey, you maybe.
They're more back than the Panthers, though.
The Panthers
I
were
don't think-
never back.
I was
to
going to say, I don't
begin
think
with.
I don't even think the Panthers were put in
You could have
forward
shown
direction.
before the kickoff against the Saints that the Panthers were already eliminated for playoff contention, and I'd be like, yeah, that's before they even step on the field.
Day,
They're
like
eliminated. Yeah,
the day of, like, oh,
Day
yeah.
of, like, oh, already eliminated. Yep, because it's the Panthers, and none of what
There
they
goes
did
kickoff,
against the
and the
Saints.
Panthers are out of contention.
Yeah, it's
Imagine
so
if they
hard
were
to judge.
Thursday night football, though. It's just like,
Right.
oh, did you guys realize that the Panthers haven't?
Right.
And the worst part is that, like, I think every fan of, like, every NFL, like, franchise right now, including other ones that are just going to have a down year, are just like, man, at least we're not the Panthers, and people are, like, feeling really bad for them. Which is, it's not funny because, like, you know, they used to be okay, but now it comes down to the owner needs to sell because, come on.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to watch a shitty product.
I know I sent you guys that tweet of the Matt Rule's like 11 and 22nd at Carolina might be the greatest single achievement in the sports history. Considering what the Panthers are now, Matt Rule winning 11 games at Carolina was probably like, oh, it's actually really good.
It's
Didn't
just
know how
so.
good they had it.
I was
Right.
gonna say it is just so funny how, like, now everybody's like, oh well, he wasn't very good. It's like I don't
still
necessarily
not
think it
very
was
good.
just him. I think maybe there's some rot somewhere that they
Yeah.
need to get out.
But
Call me crazy.
yeah, it's hard to judge any team after week one, because the Buccaneers looked fantastic with Baker against the Commanders, but again, they played the Commanders and the Saints played the Panthers, so it's like, did those teams really look that good, or is it just because they played inferior opponents week one?
Well, and the Vikings played the Giants. Let's not
And
forget.
yes,
Hey, whoa, hey.
an inferior opponent, Nate.
We've already been over this. I said we needed to get the one win in before we play the Niners, Texans, Packers, Jets, Lions, Rams
Yeah.
all in a row.
Yeah.
Yo, is that really your
I-
schedule?
I'm going to ride the high until I can't, which might be pretty
The
abrupt.
Colts.
Ooh.
Anthony Richardson did not look that bad against the Texans.
Dude, he only completed 9 passes and had over 200 yards.
I know. I don't know. if the
Pretty
Texans
good.
Defense.
Pretty good, he says. That's really good.
And I don't know if the Texans defense is just not as good. Because, I mean, the Texans still won, obviously, with their offense being as good as it is. But the Colts might be sneaky good on offense, too, going forward.
Mhm.
Who knows?
To your point, though, week one games are always kind of a crapshoot.
Yeah.
Where, like, even looking at, like, for my team, for the Eagles, you know, it's tough for 2 reasons. One, because they don't ever play. They this year at least they didn't have the starters play any preseason games, which
Mhm.
call me crazy. It's kind of a stupid decision, but whatever. What do I know? I'm not a head coach of an NFL team. Turns out that they look really rusty when you don't actually play football like full speed for 6 months or whatever.
That's right. It's
But then
it's-
also the field in Brazil just looked like
Oh,
not
yeah.
necessarily
Trash.
looked bad, but it just looked like playing on it was garbage. And I'm all for like spreading the NFL to other places, but can we, with the Super Bowl field for the Eagles a couple years ago, with this one now, it seems like this is just kind of a running thing where like fields everywhere just kind of suck lately. It's like,
Mhm.
can we figure some of this out, please?
Yeah. It to your point too, it's the same thing with the rookie quarterback conversation is I don't expect all 3 rookie quarterbacks, or if Drake May starts at some point for the Patriots, like I don't expect them all to continue just like this mediocrity the rest of the season. My guess is probably 1 or 2 probably elevates above and starts to lead their team to some wins, and probably 1 or 2 of them even kind of just stay at that mediocrity level. But still 16 more games to go and a lot to learn, especially as a rookie quarterback going forward. But also I forgot what Mason did on Sunday night or Monday Night Football for the 49ers. Because after the game they interviewed him and they're like, when did you started like you were going to be the starting running back? And he's like, oh, I kind of knew like Friday night they told me that. And Kyle Shanahan's like, no. We told him Monday that he was starting to, avoid that sweet fine from the NFL and Roger Goodell withholding information.
So in that regard, too, there was a tweet that came out from Ian Rappaport here
Mhm.
before we started about how the NFL for tonight, or not tonight, sorry, for Christian McCaffrey, how they started investigating that. And I'm like, really? It's week 1. Come on.
And I saw that clip, and all the replies under that clip that I saw were like, ooh, homeboy's going to get a nice PR talk here pretty soon. No. What things not to say to the media after your first post-game interview?
That
was one of them. Don't say, oh, I knew I was starting 3 days ago.
I was going to say the correct thing would have been like, oh, I thought maybe
they told me to get ready. They told me.
They told me on Friday that I should start thinking about getting ready.
Yep.
Having the concept of getting ready.
Be prepared.
Right. But yeah, it's fun to have a full slate of football back. It's nice to be back in the groove of things.
Did you mention that Puka Nacua is also out for 4 weeks? Okay.
Yes.
I mean,
I'm sure there's a handful. Those are like the 2 biggest names that I know of off the top of my head that were like actually on IR destination right now. Everybody else is like week to week questionable doubtfuls, but like those are the ones that are more than like, well, Puka for sure is confirmed. McCaffrey's probably trending towards the IR list. But yeah, like T. Higgins, AJ Brown was limited in practice today. I mean, you're going to have these types of things going forward. But yeah, those are probably the 2 big star-studded names right now of who is on IR and who is trending towards IR.
Well, it's not an injury, but you also
get
have
to all your fantasy draft picks, round 1, pick 1 players. Feel bad for those losers that kept or drafted Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah.
And I'm not even being sarcastic because I have no play in this whatsoever.
Hey, Christian McCaffrey not playing, but then also having Nate pick up the backup running back that helped me. That was great.
And hopefully it's going to help me in the future.
It should for a while, I would think.
Too.
Although I picked the kicker back up, but the kicker that I dropped scored more than Jordan Mason did, so that got a little dicey. But
I love kickers.
We're here. We're back.
Unless
you pick up
or Aubrey, you have no idea who's gonna do what.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Did you pick up Aubrey? Is that why your kicker scored more? Is that what you said?
No,
I dropped the 49ers kicker, and he scored like 26 points.
Sorry. I misheard
Jordan
what
Mason
you
only
said.
scored like 22 points.
Gotcha. I misheard what you said. Sorry.
That's why kickers in fantasy are great, because unless you have like the top 2 or 3 kickers, you have absolutely no idea what's going to happen.
You could have
the rest of them.
What was the one? I'm sure he still plays.
He can probably have 5 points next week instead of the 26. Like,
is it
knows?
Young Hu Ko or whatever, or Koo or whatever? Like him, I remember people were crazy about him because he had like 2 games where he scored like 18 points for people, and then like everybody picked him up, and then after that he scored like 4, and it's like
that's what Chris Boswell did against the Falcons last week. I think the Steelers only scored on field goals. So Chris Boswell probably had 25 plus points.
They probably would have scored more if they would have played Russell Wilson, but I'm just saying.
I don't know. Steelers play Denver this week, and as much as I would love to see that,
I was gonna say that's a great segue into what we're gonna see for this week. Are you excited about the possible rematch, Andy?
I'm not excited for TJ Watt. I know that much. I'm not excited to have a veteran defensive lineman go against a second game rookie QB. That's even with the Broncos' experienced veteran line. I mean, it's like trying to guard Aaron Donald. Like there's like no matter how experienced your offensive line guard tackles are, like it's still you're going up against one of the better defensive linemen in the league, if not one of the best in the league now that Aaron Donald's retired.
Was Aaron Donald good?
Kind of.
Yeah, average at best.
Average at best.
Glad we got that cleared up.
So at least in terms of my keys, I think if Bo just has a better game than he did last week, whether Denver loses or not, I think that's probably where my hope and optimism are going to come. If we just see any sort of, him not making those, I mean, his 2 interceptions that he had last week were he just threw it into double, triple coverage because it's like, oh, I can get away with that in college because those defenders are not good. Well, you're going up against, veteran defensive backs now. Like, you just can't lob the ball up and hope that your wide receiver can go up and get it, even though they're all NFL players. But if he can just correct the rookie mistakes and fix them, and I just see some improvement in Sunday, then whether Denver wins or loses, obviously I want them to win, but that's where I'm hoping. It's just, is Bo Nix going to improve and learn on his mistakes from Seattle into the Steelers? And who knows what the Steelers are going to look like on offense with Justin Fields or Russell Wilson again. I mean, they were pretty stagnant against the Falcons. And the Falcons didn't look that great either, despite all this hype about the offensive pieces. Now, how much of that was on Kirko, who knows? But
you mean the statue?
Yeah, the statue.
You just watch some of the. I'm putting this in quotes just because it's hard watching him play. Not to say that he's bad, but like, you watch him play and people are like, "Wow, he looks kind of stiff and a little slow." Like, we're shocked. We're shocked by this. Like, what?
So
turns out Achilles injuries might be bad. Who knows?
Might somewhat be bad. But that's what I'm looking forward to. And then obviously the other, we'll let Zach talk about Monday Night Football because that actually involves his team.
And Kirko Chains.
I was going to say that actually was a perfect
Sunday Night Football game.
It's like we plan these things out, but I swear we don't. But that actually does work.
It does work out. The Sunday Night Football game will probably be really fun to watch. It'll be a test to see if Caleb Williams looks better in game 2, and just to see CJ Stroud and the Texans again. I know that's, like we had talked about in our preview, that's probably going to be a lot of the favorite AFC picks outside of Kansas City, is the Texans contending for this, the AFC, or just trying to beat the Chiefs. So again, that game and excitement level will all depend on how Caleb Williams and the Bears offense look, and unless it's just going to be a Texans blowout. But who knows? Chicago's defense played really well, but they also played Tennessee, so it's how much do you take away from that?
for Tennessee.
No,
they did not.
I told y'all, Will Levis is going to be the next Jameis.
He just threw that kind of like what Tua did on his second interception or third interception last night. Tried to throw it out of bounds, and it just threw it kind of towards the sideline, towards the defender. But that's a fun game. A really fun, crappy game might be the Panthers-Chargers.
Or the Giants Commanders. We're gonna have like competition for that. The worst game of the week.
I mean, the Chargers should beat the Panthers, but like, how good do the Chargers actually look? J.K. Dobbins looked really good last week after being hurt literally all of last year. So is he going to continue it, or is it just because it's the Panthers? I don't know. But yeah, I agree, Nate. The Giants Commanders might be
strays.
Well, they suck, man.
I mean, I don't know if it's really catching a stray at this point when it's kind of deserved, but I don't know. I feel bad for Bryce Young only because it's like, man, you should be on a better team.
Yeah, I just might have a separate screen for the Giants Commanders sicko game. That's gotta be something.
I'm only going to be playing Giants Commanders and Chargers Panthers.
Don't give me time games. Give me the sicko games.
You're going to go and buy
the Vikings game on, just those two.
You're going to go and buy 2 projectors just to project those like on the walls of your place.
Did you watch Sunday Night Football? No, I watched the better Sunday games.
Yeah, the other interesting game could be the Buccaneers-Lions. I think that one has potential for some fireworks there. But
Baker played as well as he did last week. I mean, it should be a high offensive scoring game again.
Yep.
As much as the Rams, I think the Rams are also a sneaky pick in the NFC based on how they played the Lions. They were
stay healthy, I think.
Yeah, and that's the issue. If they can stay healthy, they already lost their number 1 receiver. Well, 2 technically. Cooper Kupp's probably number 1, but you lose the outstanding rookie from last year for at least 4 games. So if the Rams can stay healthy, they can be a sneaky pick in the NFC. But they're not off to a great start.
No.
Yeah, and then finally we do have the Monday night showdown between Kirko Chains and Mr. Squats 500.
600. Get it right.
200.
Take
that's my final offer.
Make it 10, 4, 3. Take it or leave it.
Leave it.
No, I'm excited to see that game on a field that doesn't suck as bad as the one in Brazil.
Mhm.
Mostly because for the entire offseason, as an Eagles fan, it's been Bryce Huff instead of Hassan Reddick, which that whole saga is even better. It's like, oh, now apparently he once traded and whatnot. Okay, okay. Good job, Jets. Way to go on that one. But then Bryce Huff was supposed to be the replacement for him, and I don't think he played bad by any means. Granted, as I was riding out to Western Nebraska for this golf tournament, it turns out service out there gets a little spicy when you get into hills like this. So,
Can't confirm.
I was watching some of the game, and then I would wait for it to load, and then I'd watch some more of the game. So it's not like I got to see all of it live or anything, but he didn't play a bad game, but I think the field didn't help him any. You could tell, and the Packers had the same thing. Like, their edge rushers just couldn't, for the life of them, get any traction, it seemed. So it'll be nice to see the defense that's supposed to be much improved under Vic Fangio on a field that's not as slick, not as bad, blah, 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 blah. And then hopefully the offense continues to get some of that rust out, because they looked okay, but I was like,
weird what Saquon looks like against a offensive line that actually blocks for him.
I was gonna say Saquon looked really, really, really good.
It's like the guy that we were
Hurts.
promised out of college.
Jalen Hurts looked really good for the most part, but then still kind of made some boneheaded plays. So I just, if anything, I think a lot of it's that week one.
Jalen, not because he throws left-handed, but also because he throws left-handed. But he's like Tua, but without the concussions in terms of decision making. Where he'll look really good, but then he'll have Tua type-esque throws where it's like, dude, where are you throwing it? Or who are you throwing it to? Into double, triple coverage type thing.
I have this.
Obviously, I would take Jalen Hurts over Tua any day of the week. But.
Yeah, well, the one thing Jalen Hurts does have is the ability to protect himself.
Yes.
The only thing, and maybe this was just him trying to play hero ball, which at this point I think Kellen Moore needs to just say, hey, don't do that. Because there's so many times, it didn't happen that many times, I guess, but there were quite a few times where at least 2 or 3 where I was like, just throw the ball away. Because it was 1st and 10 or 2nd and 8 or whatever. It's like, you have another down to work with. Just throw the ball away. And he would try to, the one interception that he did throw was forced. And it's like, dude, come on. And I get that. I get saying this as a non-NFL QB is well, what do I know? But in my head, I'm like, I feel like that's one of the second or third thing they teach you as a quarterback is do your reads, nothing there, throw it away. I don't know. I feel like that's just kind of second nature to these guys. I think he's just trying to play too much hero ball, but who knows? Maybe it could have just been something with the game and, again, rust. So clean that up. And I think Atlanta's it's at home for the Eagles, so I think Atlanta's a good matchup for that too. It should be a good game. I don't think necessarily that Atlanta's going to be a horrible team, but I think they might have a slow start, so I kind of want to see a dominant game, but we'll see.
Kyle Pitts is back.
Sure.
Kyle Pitts is back.
That's all. That's all.
It works out for me because he's also on my fantasy team. I don't know if anybody's noticing a trend at this point, but I really like players that are on my fantasy team.
Nah, not at all.
But from there, we shall make the transition back to Saturdays, and I suppose there's probably a couple games tonight. But college football also happening at the same time. It was a great weekend. Everything came back together. we have football back finally. I was just looking through the scores from last week, and I forgot how genuinely decent of a slate we had.
Yeah,
I mean there were a couple of upset games and closer games than what we were anticipating, but I was like, wow,
Speaking of upset games, segue being Notre Dame, obviously getting upset by NIU.
Where are we going with this?
Yeah.
Do that.
That was wild.
When that game happened, obviously we were all cheering for Northern Illinois action, but I also had this weird feeling in my gut right before the Nebraska game. I'm like, it's been kind of a wonky upset Saturday already. Is that like a bad vibe or omen to Nebraska?
I wondered the same thing. I was like, I don't know.
All these teams that were expected to win are either really close or losing these games. So it's like, is Nebraska going to have like a weird, odd Saturday vibe type game? And obviously, we'll talk about that in a second because it didn't happen. But yeah, that good for Northern Illinois. It's not bad that teams lose to Northern Illinois. Some teams in certain programs of this area have lost to Northern Illinois when Tanner Lee was their quarterback. I'm not saying it was a team that we know. I'm just saying it can happen, and it's okay to lose to Northern Illinois. That's all.
Our team had a concept of a plan at that point.
We never lost to Northern Illinois in the Nebraska Ability Sportsball podcast era. So.
We have not. We are, because they played them last year and we won, so we're fine.
So,
now this would have been Mike Riley.
Does that mean we're better than Notre Dame?
Some
the streets are saying.
Yeah.
There we go. But no, it was cool with Northern Illinois because I believe they said their coach had been a former player, and they had never had a at least top 5. I can't remember if it's top 5 or top 10 win in their program history. So they were able to go into South Bend. So they did it on the road and pulled off the upset 16-14 against number 5 Notre Dame. Always lovely to see that team go down. Yes. Unfortunately, the other team that we do like to see go down, Texas,
they
told Michigan that they're not good at football anymore.
Yeah, I was gonna say two things happened in that game. One, and Texas made a claim that they're probably going to be pretty good this year. I think we knew that, but they officially said no, we're going to be okay. And then I think Michigan made the statement of, turns out that all your players leaving to go to the NFL makes that next year
not
really tough. And not cheating.
Yeah, Texas, obviously being in the SEC, are going to have a tougher schedule. They still have to play. I mean, that 2-game stretch where they play Oklahoma and then Georgia back-to-back weeks, it's going to be really telling of, is Texas good or is just a fluke start to start the season? Because we knew Michigan was not going to be what they were last year. And Saturday proved that. Now, whether Michigan's like that the rest of the way, who knows? But Michigan is obviously just not as good. But Texas, still has a couple more games before they ramp up to that back-to-back schedule where they play 2 of the top teams in the SEC.
And then the third top team, they play at Vanderbilt afterwards. So
yes, yeah. And obviously, we're all Vandy. So,
well, and it's weird too because I'm looking at the rest of their schedule too, and so Oklahoma and Georgia being the big ones, Vanderbilt obviously, but like the rest of the schedule just looks kind of So I mean, Texas is probably, like, I don't want to say they're back, but they definitely look really good this year. But also, like, outside of maybe 3 or 4 games, for sure 2. But maybe sprinkling a couple more as we get more into the season. It's just like, are they? Is it going to be one of those where they get to the playoffs? I think they'll probably be a pretty high playoff team. But then once they get to the playoff and then they play somebody that's also on that same level, do we finally see that the breakdown where it's like, oh, they're not who they said they were, kind of
right
thing.
And yeah, time will tell to see how good Texas is and how Michigan is. But I mean, obviously right now Texas is contending for Georgia for be the top team in the country, and then Michigan. I don't think Michigan will sniff. I think they're probably going to have 3 or 4 more losses. They will probably finish around 8-4. Is my guess. They definitely are not beating Ohio State.
No,
yeah, we can tell that now. But they'll be interesting to watch. Kind of along the same Big Ten storylines there. El Asico lived up to everything that it lived up to be.
With a perfect ending too.
A perfect ending.
Absolutely.
2019 game under. I think the under hit, unless the under was 38. But either way, Iowa had control of that entire game up until Iowa State came back and won on a last-second field goal in Kinnick Stadium. Even better. But yeah, that I was solely watching that game, even though I think Kansas State and Tulane and Okie State were on the ropes during that time, and I was like, yeah, but El Assico is on.
Yeah, Tulane.
Yep.
I was watching that game, and I was just like, "Oh, come on," because go
I
Green
know.
Wave. But
That would have been
that game,
Mhm.
the
been great.
Iowa State game was hard not to watch, especially in that last
absolutely
5 minutes.
Yep.
And then a team
Although
that
Oklahoma State did go to double overtime with Arkansas.
love college kickers. Chance to win the game, and they both missed.
It's just nice to know. It is just nice to know, though, that as of right now, with Nebraska and us being as Nebraska fans, it's nice to know that we are not the only ones with kicker problems.
Right.
And granted, we might have worse kicker problems. We don't quite know yet,
Mhm.
but at least we're not the only ones where it's like, we missed a
Right.
field goal, and we were the only one in the freaking college football realm to miss a
Right.
field goal.
Penn State barely beat Bowling Green.
They were down at halftime.
That was a back and forth game for no apparent reason. Oregon, I don't know how good Oregon is. Boise State also might be really good.
Yeah, they got their running back as a dude.
Yeah.
Wisconsin for a while
was on the
almost
ropes.
lost to
South
USD.
Dakota,
Yeah.
Vermilion represent.
We were flipping through channels, and we came across the Wisconsin game, and I didn't quite catch the logo at first, and I was like, it was like University of South Dakota. I was like, nuh-uh. I was like, that is the USD, and I was like, okay.
USD. And then a team that we will see here in a couple weeks that did pull off the upset is Illinois over Kansas.
Yep.
And that game we'll obviously talk about more next week for Nebraska, but that definitely is, if Illinois wins this week and Nebraska wins this week, that's probably a top 25 matchup next weekend in Memorial Stadium. So that's going to be very interesting to see how Illinois does this weekend, and obviously Nebraska has to take care of business too. But
Bert knows what he's doing there.
Yeah, and every Nebraska, Illinois, regardless of whether they've been ranked or not, has always been a close game every single year.
Mm-hmm.
It's like Northwestern, besides like 1 or 2 games, but it's one of those teams that Nebraska just always has played close, no matter the skill level of each team. But yeah, I'm excited for that game, not only because I'm going, but just because that's probably going to be a top 25 matchup too, assuming they take care of business this weekend on both ends. Because Illinois finished probably, I think, just like 26th or 27th in the polls. So they're like right outside the top 25. So assuming they win, they'll probably be ranked next week. Obviously, things have to happen at the bottom end of that poll for them to move up. But yeah, with that, if you guys,
Nebraska moving further up.
Yeah, if we hit
Exactly.
a nice segue.
Segue.
Obviously, outside of the 28-10 whopping of the Colorado Buffaloes, the other big news of that is Nebraska being ranked for the first time since 2019, and they're also their first 2-0 start since 2016, and the good old Mike Riley season.
I
still refuse to acknowledge our 2019 ranking.
Yeah,
I don't know that that's real.
I even remember
that was so saying, that I had to go back and look at that. That was it was all just the anticipation of Scott Frost.
Mm-hmm.
Was that going into year 2?
Yeah.
Going kind of what this is right now. You figured out they weren't good in year 1. Now you have all this year 2 returning pieces, and you win your first game, and it's like, oh yes, Nebraska's going to be ranked. Year 2's on its way, and then obviously we know what happened, skyrocket down. But
yeah,
I mean, this feels different for all of us. I mean, we know that it's different. We know that Matt Rule is the dude. We know that Dylan's the dude. We know this defense is the dude. And I vouch that Tony White gets triple whatever he's making.
Agreed.
I don't know what that is, but whatever it is, it's not enough.
The one thing that I definitely took from this game for the Huskers was 28-10. You look at that score, you're like, oh, Nebraska won.
Mm-hmm.
You watch the game though, it should have been 45-3.
Mm-hmm.
There were so many penalties in the back half, and I'm not one. I honestly don't fully buy
fourth quarter.
I don't fully buy into this conspiracy of Vegas has to call it in, and I'm guessing there's probably some of that, but like that did not help convince me that it's not real.
I will
'Cause I
buy
was
into the
like, good
conspiracy
Lord.
that the Big 12 refs are trying to rig something.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
It
I
was
mean,
a rough show.
and the good part of that, quote unquote good, was that in previous years, Nebraska teams would have 100%. Like after that first penalty, whether
they
it
would
was
have
a
folded.
ticky tackle, they would have folded. And then Colorado probably, I don't know if they would have come back at that point, but previous years, Colorado would have started making a run.
28-24 could have been.
Yeah, it would have got to that point
touchdowns.
where we have a tight game, and all of a sudden you're just like, oh crap, here we go. Whereas this time, defense, offense, whatever, they were specifically the offense. The one I remember is they went for a pass on like 1st and 10, got it just down the field, came back because of holding or whatever, and they're like, I guess we got to do it again. And then they did it again, and I'm like, okay, so
the Ramir Johnson touchdown got called back, but I mean, a couple of those Ja'Cory Barney like sweep and reverse or drag routes that went for like 20-30 yards all got called back, and it's like, for a dude that I'm excited to see his potential going forward the rest of the season, because like the plays that did get called back, I mean, he's got speed and athleticism as a freshman, so I'm super excited to see him get more involved. But it's like, it's one of those, like, it just sucks that like the plays that he breaks off every single time always get called back. And the thing that I loved about what Matt said, either some point this week or after the game, he's like, I'm kind of glad, we didn't play well in that second half. So it gives me something to yell at them about. Because like you probably have no issues with how they played in the first half. And the second half, he's like, yeah, thank God obviously we could have won. Nate, that was like his quote, like it should have been a 40 or 50 point game. So it's like, yeah, now I have something to yell at you about. Type thing.
When's the last time that we were like that elated? And like Colorado being just Colorado this year, and everybody's like, oh, they beat North Dakota State, which, not putting them down, but it's like they beat North Dakota State, and everybody's like, oh, Colorado's probably going to go in and kick Nebraska's ass. It's like, thank God that Nebraska decided, nah, not today.
And I know I've watched the new Chasing 3 episode, and I know you guys have probably seen the clips online of like Shiloh at the coin flip saying like, oh, we're about to roll your guys, we're about to roll over you, and Ty Robinson's like, I that's all he said. And then obviously as the game went, I don't think Colorado was even remotely prepared for what they were about to walk into, because you watch that first drive of Colorado, they do like the swing pass that goes incomplete, they do another pass that gets like stopped at the line, and then Shador gets sacked on 3rd down. And that first swing pass that was dropped that easily could have been caught, I mean, it's like that receiver probably just was not prepared for what was about to happen in that game. And I don't think the entire Colorado team was. Obviously, the second half, they played a little bit better, and Nebraska, as we know, did not play as well. Some of that, yes, was the ref show, but offense looked stagnant in the second half, and I don't know if half of that was just they just got conservative all of a sudden, or like, we can rely on this defense to win this game, and they did, but I don't think you can afford to do that too much going forward the rest of the season. When you have a chance to step on the throat of your rival, especially, you keep doing it. And yeah, it's some of that, like the Ramir touchdown. Obviously, if there's not a play or a holding call, that's a 35-10 game. Or a couple of those Ja'Cory Barney pass runs don't get called back. You set yourself up in field goal position or a chance to continue to drive and score. So it's a couple of those mistakes like that, and I think hopefully they get corrected this week, because one of my biggest critiques that I know I talked to you guys about was like the edge perimeter blocking from your receivers, tight ends, your guards that got those holding calls called back. I know Ramir had a holding call. A couple of the wide receivers were blocking the back or holding calls. So hopefully they just get those fundamentals fixed up. But if that's what you're having to fix during the game instead of turnovers, I mean, that's not a bad thing to get mad about, because those you would assume are easy fundamental fixes to have as a coaching staff, versus, oh, we don't have the talent in this area. Like, what are we going to do to try to adjust the offense defense throughout the season? But yeah, that's offense needs to be better. We know that. The second half proved that, and they should be better this weekend, I would hope. Because from here on out, I mean, none of these, as much as good as Nebraska has looked, they've also not been afforded to stagnant in anything that they do, because we know with history as Big Ten schedule goes, we aren't like the UTEP game, the Northern Iowa game are games that we normally have not been we've been expected to win it and then we don't win.
Or we play it so much closer than it should be.
Than it should be.
And it's just like
and those are the games you should go in, like Texas did against Colorado State. You should go in and whip them for 52-0. Like Nebraska has not been able to confidently say that as a program because we don't deserve to do that yet because we haven't proven it yet. So that's why like this weekend's game against Northern Iowa is a game that you are expected to go in and whoop them. You know, Northern Iowa is really good too. They are ranked in the FCS level. And they have a running back that's run for, I think, 200 yards a game in the first 2 games so far. But the schedule is not going to get easier, despite if the Big Ten competition's not that good. Historically, Nebraska has not beaten these teams that they are expected to beat every single year. But the defense is going to be there. We know the defense is going to be there. It's just, can the offense continue from half to half? The UTEP game was kind of a fluke because obviously we knew they got pulled like in the third quarter because they were winning so bad. So yes, and it also might happen again this weekend too. If Nebraska dominates Northern Iowa, the starters might get pulled again. So we might not fully see what another full quarter starting string offense looks like until next weekend against Illinois. So a lot of things to correct on the offense, and I think we know that too. But despite all the negativity, it's fun to nitpick the negativity when you're winning, because it's things that you have to correct. And I would rather be nitpicking the negativity when we're winning rather than like, oh, the sky is falling and you're 0-2 trying to nitpick. We love it. And obviously the special teams is another subject, specifically the kicking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At this point, I don't know. I just think Nebraska's just destined to not have good kickers ever again.
Yeah, that's a tough hang. The returns, I do like the returns more this year than last year. We are returning them. You know, we did give up a blocked kick on the punt, so that probably does have to get addressed. But I mean, a 32-yard chip shot, I know it's a college kid, but like that's a standard kick anywhere in the NFL, college. Like that's a chip shot that you should make. And Alvano pulled it left. So it's like, yeah, I can see why Matt Rule has said the past couple of weeks, like, yeah, place kicking kind of keeps me up at night because it is very worrisome.
But I think that kind of plays to the entire point, or like the ethos around Nebraska football this year and last year too. But like this year, it just seems like there's a way different energy with the team where even though Alvano missed that kick, or, you know, whatever, however they're going to solve this, I just have this feeling that it may, I don't know about solving it. Kicking is a weird thing where it just may not necessarily get solved, but it gets better. But the point being is like, it just feels like every single person on the team is accountable to the point where it's like Alvano might even be the first one to be like, yeah, I'm going to give up my spot because I can't make kicks. Maybe not that serious, but the point being is that they'll take that accountability and run with it and get better. Might also be part of the point where he might still be hurt, might not be playing 100%.
Right.
So,
and I not that I want close games. Obviously, I want to win handedly, but I am really curious to see if once Nebraska plays one of these close games and you're needing 3 points to either take the lead or tie the lead, is, you know, does Matt Rule trust the kickers at that point to make it, or do we see them try to go for it on 4th down or something like that? Because we don't trust our kickers. Because historically, as we know, Nebraska plays a lot of close games, and these games that we lose are by like 3 points. So is there going to be a spot this season? More than likely, yes. So what does Matt Rule do in that situation? So that's the part, again, I want to win every game, 40-7 or something like that. So you don't have to be put in this situation, but once you get to conference play and you play better competition, historically Nebraska plays these games closer than they need to be. So that's the part that worries me, is how do we handle the kicking in a pressure situation late in the game? Do we go for it? Do we trust Alvano? Do we put in the backup kicker, whoever that guy is? I know they've said his name, I just don't remember.
Jacob Hole.
Yeah, that sounds right. So That's the part that interests me.
I'm in the same boat.
Yeah,
Nate, Nate, I was gonna say, Nate, you've been awfully quiet.
I've also been talking a lot, so it's kind of on me.
No, I agree with just about everything. I'm a little more lenient on the offense just because yes, they have work to do, and we want to see them be more consistent and not stagnate quite as much. But they're better than they were last year.
Yeah,
and that means a lot to me, honestly. Because like you mentioned, we have one turnover in the first two games.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure we were like at 6 or 7 last year through the first two games.
Jeff Sims turnovers specifically, we were through 7.
Didn't he have
2 games?
4 turnovers in the Colorado game, or was it just 3? Which
so.
It was
either way, 3 or 4 is bad
because he had 7 through week 2. So yeah, and Dylan has 0.
Yep, and you can tell it's just a cleaner offense, and it just looks better. They can run the ball with just about anyone they want to. Dante Dowdell is going to be a force. He didn't fumble. He learned from that mistake last week. And
he ran hard too.
Yep.
Like didn't Shiloh Sanders go out because of the hit that he took from
Correct.
Dowdell?
He broke his forearm on that.
Quote unquote broke his forearm.
He broke his forearm and he's going to be
though.
back in 2 and 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But I mean, he was the lead running back with 17 carries. Ramir was the second. And Ramir is definitely more of a substitute passing running back, essentially. But I mean, Ramir also had 9 carries, but he led the team with 8 catches. So it's definite that Nebraska runs a lot of check downs or just 5-yard drag routes to Ramir for Dylan as a check down option. But it's clear, at least through 2 weeks, that yes, Dante did learn from his mistake. He's clearly running back number 1 right now. Ramir is co-running back, passing running back as an option. But yeah, I agree with you, Nate. I love how he ran last week, and as long as the turnovers aren't an issue, I mean, he's going to be clear number 1 running back.
And honestly, if I don't know. I mean, you're not going to score on every drive, unfortunately, unless you happen to be, I don't know, like the Chiefs on steroids or something. But
hey, we have a quarterback that looks like him.
True.
And actually does play like him.
That is true. And of course, we were talking about it too, I think on Twitter or X or whatever we're calling it now.
Twitter.
How Patrick Mahomes was talking about Dylan and how, like what he saw. And I know some of us don't like Patrick Mahomes, I understand, but he's kind of good.
Is it me?
Yeah, it might be. So I'm just saying, when Patrick Mahomes says, "Hey, he might be a pretty good quarterback," I'm thinking maybe he knows his stuff about it.
Yeah,
maybe
I've long stipulated that if he wasn't on the Chiefs, I would love him, but he's on the Chiefs.
Yeah,
it's just like Derek Jeter. Like, I love Derek Jeter as a shortstop. He just happened to play for the team that I absolutely despise in the game.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
So, but yeah, it's. To your point, Zach, it's very, very high praise that the NFL media at post-game practices are asking Patrick Mahomes about this college quarterback from Nebraska. I'd never even dreamed of that. The past 20 years of you're asking the best quarterback in the NFL about a college kid that plays at Nebraska. That's insane praise through 2 weeks of the season.
My only concern at this point now is, and I know this is way future at this point. It may not be, but we've got Dylan for this year, maybe next year. How, if he keeps playing as well as he is all the way through,
I think
Rule knows.
I think it's a 3-year plan, and I think Rule probably knows that too.
3 years, you can't good quarterback play.
Yeah, you can't. You can't declare until your junior year. After your junior year to go to the NFL,
that helps.
Yeah. So, I mean, as long as he stays at Nebraska, I assume he's on a 3-year plan. Just with the trajectory of how much praise he's getting. Obviously, if he keeps playing as well as he is right now, it's going to happen sooner rather than later. The issue that could break that is if he transfers at some point before then, but we hope not. But if I were Rule, I would be thinking, yes, we get him at most 3 years, and that's it. unless by miraculous reason he wants to stay for a fourth. But as for how much talk he gets about how good he is, I doubt there's anything that's keeping him in college for 4 years.
I'd also
no
want to go for the 4-peat. So
yeah, well, if I was running college football 25 dynasty mode, then yes, I would too.
Yeah,
I put all my chips in the persuasion characteristics of my coach to persuade him to stay. But
you know, I was gonna say though, Andy, I don't know if I fully agree with your take on the. I mean, the offense did not look as good the second half. That is objective fact.
Mhm.
But I don't necessarily like. I didn't read it as being worried because again, if you go back and the plays that they did, like the touchdown got called back, but then the big plays also got called back. Those probably would have led to touchdowns.
Oh yeah.
And then only that, like the offense was just playing very conservatively.
Mhm.
It looked different because I think it was meant to. So then a lot of people that are freaking out, like not that you're freaking out, but more just like a lot of like online speculation, like, oh, the second half looked way worse. I'm like, I think that was on purpose. I think at that point it was like we knew we were playing well enough, even at call it 50% of what we would normally do.
Mhm.
We were just playing good enough. Which, you know, again, to the point, I want to see a step on the throat of, I think we were trying is the problem is we were trying to do that. And then every time we got close, the laundry came out.
Right.
And it's like I went back and I was watching some of the second half just, you know, out of curiosity. And it was just fun to watch the Buffaloes just get derailed. But it was just like, I don't know, like the plays weren't bad calls. Some of them were maybe questionable in the sense of like 2nd and 15 were running up the middle, but it's like, you know, I get it. Run the clock down. And it's not like Colorado was necessarily being smart with how they were playing with like their timeouts and stuff either. So it's just like, it's like, you know, we do still need to see them play a full 4-quarter game, I think, but I don't think I'm concerned to the level yet. I think Illinois is going to be where it's like, okay, now you have to go play a full 4-quarter game. Because I'm not saying that we can overlook NIU, but I think if we play like
we don't want to play NIU.
Oh shoot! Yeah, I keep doing that.
We don't want to play NIU right now.
You and I,
they just beat a top 5 team.
I have done that so many times when I'm talking about this game. Every time.
Well, I would be terrified to play Northern Illinois this weekend.
No kidding, they would be on a tear. Anyway, you and I know we, like you said, Andy, we can't overlook them. But on the flip side, I think as long as we come out and play a good first half of football, I think it's just kind of that talent gap thing. My only concern becomes now if we do win that game pretty handedly, you know, the question I have coming from the Colorado game is, are we that good or is Colorado that bad or is somewhere in the middle of that?
Why not both?
I think it could be. I think it could be both. I'm just saying that's kind of that like Nebraska doubt creeping on me right now. Yeah. It's like, oh man, Nebraska looked really good. Or Colorado is just not good at all. And I think it was a mix of both.
And them playing CSU this weekend will also be another sign of if they're good or not. And UTEP lost by a touchdown last weekend, but they're now 0-2. So it's UTEP's not as good either. But again,
based on our stat from earlier, it sounds like UTEP is going to have a hard time making it to the Super Bowl then.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
No.
I just had to make sure. I feel like we had to make sure that was, you know, clear cut. So.
I bet them at plus 80 million.
Yes.
To win the Super Bowl.
Well, you might want to cash out now and get your
why did it keep asking? Are you sure? Are you more sure about this?
You kept pressing yes.
Are you sure? Are you sure? Please don't.
Are you absolutely sure about it? Don't do this. He kept telling you. He kept trying to warn you, and you just didn't listen.
But yeah, I think we'll quickly touch on we haven't really talked about the defense at all. That obviously dominated and won us the game.
They had my favorite play of the entire game. That was Tommy Hill.
Those pick six. Oh god, that was and that play. I don't even think happens unless Buschini boots the ball as well as he did on that punt. They got him down at the 2. If that play if he has a normal punt and they get it at like the 10-15 yard line, I don't think Colorado would have ran what they ran in that moment. That play is only set up because of what Buschini did prior and pinning them down at like the 1 or 2 yard line. So Buschini looked good. I was
going to say Buschini had a sneaky good game.
Yeah. So that Tommy Hill pick was all set up because of special teams. And that's what you want to see. Complimentary football is you're punching the ball away, but you pin them back, and then your defense goes and gets the pick six. So like that's what Matt Rule has been preaching, is just good all around complementary football, which is what Nebraska has not done forever.
To your same idea there too. One that definitely would have not gone Nebraska's way back in the day is the one that I think was it Ramir that caught it off the. It was like the bobbled ball, and he caught it for a touchdown to go 28-0. I'm like,
that's one of those games where like every time the bounce did not go Nebraska's way, like that was 20 years of karma all in that first half.
It really was.
Like 9 out of 10 times again, a linebacker picks that ball off. It's just the one time where the punches are going your way for that night for Nebraska. That was that play in a nutshell.
It's also really crazy just like looking at the stat lines, specifically for Colorado in this case. Like Shadur Sanders had almost 250 yards passing and whatnot, and really had a pretty good game. And
that's Travis what Hunter, I told you guys.
Travis Hunter also had a sneaky good game, and yet it's just
a very quiet 110-yard game. And that was our keys. I know that we'd mentioned before was you limit their explosive plays, and they did have a few long, passing plays, but the defense didn't. Yeah, we knew they would. The defense only gave up a touchdown. They didn't give up, the 50-yard touchdowns, which how Colorado scored against NDSU.
They didn't give up the touchdown in the fourth quarter. So
it's Travis. Like we knew this. We knew Travis and Shadur were going to get their numbers, regardless of how well of a defense you play. Is can you limit those explosive plays? And Nebraska did. And you got to Shadur the same amount. So they got it to him less, but you still pressured him as much as you did last year. It's just you didn't turn the ball over 4 times this year on offense. So
turns out it makes a difference.
It does.
Who knew?
And then to your point, Nate, we held him until the fourth quarter of getting a touchdown, and I think it was gifted. With how much the refs were helping get him there, it's like, come on. And I'm all fine. Like, if you're going to call penalties, that's fine. If you're going to be flag happy, I don't care. But just keep it consistent. When every single one is on Nebraska for what felt like 6 plays in a row, it's like, okay, this is looking a little pointed.
my favorite thing of all the sacks that Nebraska had is 6. There were 6 total sacks. One was on that last one was on that backup quarterback, so Shadur got sacked 5 times, but all 6 sacks were by a different defensive player. Not one, like Natch didn't have 2 or Ty didn't have 2. Like everybody that got a sack was a different defensive player. And that just tells you how much skill and depth is on that defense. Is any one of those pieces can get you at any point. And that speaks to the volumes of Tony White. That speaks to the volumes of the guys that came back and wanted to play their last year here. Is you have so much, you can shake up that defense however you want it. And John Bullock had a fantastic game.
He played his butt off.
He played his butt off. He had that 4th down stop. He had a couple of big pass breakups. Mackay Gaber, I think it's Gaber. Yeah. He's going to be out the first half of the Northern Iowa game because of that targeting call. But prior to that happening,
targeting call.
Targeting call. It kind of was targeting.
That one was targeting. Now that I think about it,
Shadur was sliding.
That one was targeting.
So he'll be out the first half, but he also had a fantastic game. I know he had a pass breakup that led to the Colorado field goal where they looked like they might have scored on that drive too. So and then obviously, the Tommy Hill pick 6. I mean, that was electric. But it's just, you have so many defensive pieces that you can play them anywhere. You can shake it up how you want. And no matter if it's a second string guy in versus the first string, like you have so much talent at first and second string that you can mix and match and it still be the defense that wreaks havoc on every offensive line. And it's just nice to have a positive turnover margin. I'll be honest. I mean, that fumble at the end of the game technically still counts as a turnover for Nebraska on that strip sack. But I mean, you end up at a +2 turnover margin regardless at the end of the day.
Hey, a win's a win.
A win, and we don't apologize for wins.
Correct.
But I know I wrote that stat in our notes that, through 2 weeks, they've allowed 17 points. They've scored 9 of them. But the pick 6 and the safety. Forget about the safety last week against UTEP. I don't forget. Some people do, but I don't. Yes. They blocked the field goal against Colorado. And what amazed me is on 24 third down attempts through 2 games, they've only allowed 7 first downs, which is phenomenal.
Now, of course, we have to go into that with the
With
old
who they played,
look at who we
yes,
played.
right.
But the thing is they did they still did it. Like
Right.
they're playing football teams. It's not like it's a bunch of it's not the whatever the running joke is, the blind and the poor or whatever, the school of the blind and the poor type of thing. And I mean, UTEP wasn't. I mean, they were not on the talent level, but they weren't a bad team.
Oh no,
and Colorado. Well, whatever. They're Colorado.
The Lions and
they are a team.
They are a team. And we
They're
knew
one
that.
of the teams of all time.
We knew that game was going to come down to which line wins the game, and obviously both of Nebraska's lines won that game. And we took away. We knew Shedeur and Trevor were going to get their numbers. As can you get to them and make a difference in the game? And they did. And I know I wrote that note that Max Olson had tweeted out that of the 22 times that Shedeur dropped back, he was 5 for 15 with the 45 yards and that one touchdown at the end of the game. But on 19 of those 22 dropbacks that Shedeur had, Nebraska only brought 3-4 guys.
That's crazy.
Which is a normal defensive line.
That is crazy to me.
For Nebraska running a 3-3-5, having 3 up at the front is normal for them. But for like anybody else, having 4 defensive linemen is the standard. Mm-hmm. And Nebraska, based off that, really only blitzed 3. I mean, if you go off that number, they probably blitzed a little bit more, but like they probably blitzed maybe 3 or 4 times that were more than 4 guys.
It turns out that going to the transfer portal to get offensive line guys that can't really build a rapport with your quarterback, who then your quarterback later goes on to say comments like, well, how many times did Raiola get hit? Like, bro, don't throw your offensive line under the bus.
I'm pretty sure they were saying like throughout the game that before Shedeur was saying that he'd have an answer for anything that the defense threw at him too. So that was
my favorite thing from the entire game, not even talking about the football plays, is the last like 2.5 minutes when they put the camera and Shadeur's walking out. And I'm like, really? Really?
It's just
they can talk such big smack, and then all of a sudden they get smacked in the mouth, and they're like, "Oh, we don't know what to do." Watching Travis, personally speaking, like Colorado is just a hate game for me. So watching Shedeur walk out, I'm like, okay, well, whatever, you do you, go ball. But then watching Travis Hunter just freak out about every little thing, I'm just like, it was like Nebraska just showed up and they knew the assignment.
Yeah.
To take some of that Gen Z.
It's wild to think that like of the 22 designed drop back passes that Shedeur had, Nebraska was dropping 7 to 8 in the coverage and still getting pressure and sacking Shedeur with 3 guys.
It's also crazy to me how like we were talking about how Jalen Hurts, or I was at least, how he plays like hero ball. There were so many times where I'm like, I'm not even necessarily that I wanted him to do it, but it's just like so many times where he should have just thrown the ball away. I'm like, why do you keep holding on to it?
And that's obviously a Colorado issue that we don't have to get into, but
yeah, I was gonna say like that was just looking back at it as like the memories of the game that I was like, oh man, it was just weird because it's like half the time in the past 5 years we'd be like, oh, well, just wait for Nebraska to screw it up, and even with all the penalties, we had 12 penalties called against us, and a lot of them were questionable.
Yes.
But yeah, they were in the second half too. But it's like
at least the rest were consistent. I mean, there were some that shouldn't have been called against us, and there were some that weren't called but should have been called. But it was going at least both ways. But that was the frustrating part too. Was like we were on pace for at one point like a flag every single play.
Well, that I was gonna say that
was getting old real quick.
I was like, I'm guessing there were probably some legitimate things, but I think there was another one where like there was
like the roughing the passer that was called on Dylan was not roughing the passer, but the one that wasn't called was. Like the one where he got basically his face, like his helmet taken off, was not called. But the one that like he got hit like immediately as he was letting go of the ball was called roughing the passer, and it's like that's just a normal hit. But
well,
it's like,
anymore though, you don't know. Like so many times you see a roughing the passer call anymore.
Or did you? I don't know if you guys saw the photo of I think it was Ty Robinson's like jersey literally being pulled.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was not called a
That was
holding.
not
I'm like,
called.
that's literally holding by the letter of the law.
It's not even that it's just holding. It's holding that the entire stadium can see
Saw.
and they don't call it. Like
Yeah.
that was my problem. I
And it's
don't
not
have a
like his
problem with calling
like the
penalties.
undershirt is not part of the jersey, but it was his literal jersey being pulled off of his shoulder pad. That was not called holding.
And I call penalties because that's part of the game. I understand that, but like, come on, like some of them, I was like, you're reaching on some of these.
Yeah.
And like holding, I understand, but it's like holding is on every play. And it'd be different if like they were like, oh, one on Nebraska, and then like 2 plays later, oh, there's one on Colorado. I'd be like, okay, there's some balance here.
Right.
It just didn't seem like there was in that back half.
No, it was a rough show, to say the least, in the second half. But Nate, if we want to switch gears to our opponent for this weekend.
The breaking news, I guess, is that Nebraska, we've kind of probably mentioned it or alluded to it at least. Nebraska is officially ranked number 23 in the nation. Exciting times. Yes. We are welcoming the Northern Iowa, not Northern Illinois, the Northern Iowa.
The other
Panthers to Lincoln on Saturday, and I believe it's the alma mater of Troy Dannon.
Troy Dannon, yes. And I forget there's somebody in the athletic department that's higher up in the rankings on Northern Iowa that's a graduate of Nebraska too. Okay. I don't remember what her name was, but she is like some sort of deputy director within Northern Iowa athletics. It's like a Nebraska grad, so kind of funny there too. But
well, yeah, sorry about the landing spot in Iowa, but congratulations on the position. But we are, I believe you mentioned UNI, they're ranked in the FCS at the moment. I believe you said 21st or so. So they're in the same conference, I believe, as like North Dakota State, South Dakota, North Dakota, all of them. So in a solid conference of the FCS ranks. So they usually are facing some good competition. We are currently seeing 30.5-point favorites.
Seems wild to me.
Like, fair, but a little.
I would bet Northern Illinois on the points. That's an insane amount to cover.
That is, yeah, that's a lot.
If it was 28, I would bet Nebraska, but like 30, I bet Northern Illinois.
Yeah,
and not be saying that they're going to win, but like that's just an insane amount of points to cover.
You just did it too. It's Northern Iowa, not Northern Illinois. You silly goose.
Northern Iowa. Yeah. It's so much Northern Illinois talk this week. I can't help myself. But
yeah, UNI, they are 2-0. They beat Valparaiso and St. Thomas, Minnesota in their opening games. So, I mean, I don't have really a great read on them, but from us, one of the points I was going to bring over that kind of, I don't know, probably contradicts what I just said earlier. The offense worries me to an extent because I was just looking at some of the stats and we were only 3 for 12 on third down, and like against Northern Iowa, that's probably not going to be much of an issue. But like you get into Big Ten play, you need to kind of convert those third downs at a little higher rate there, and so again, you could make the case that with the big plays being called back, kind of would have evened out there. But that's kind of what I'm looking for. If they can improve there, maybe just get to like 30-yard line and automatically kick a field goal so you get some practice in. I don't know if that's the fix there, but overall, I don't have too many, keys to the game personally, other than, I mean,
keep doing what
I think 30-point win is going to be tough to get, but I mean, I think it should be a pretty handy victory, should be over by halftime-ish type game.
Yeah. So I would take Northern Illinois or Northern Iowa. God.
Well, maybe.
I cannot. I would take Northern Illinois, whoever they're playing, though. Get them to win out the rest of the season. They're going to.
We can just will it into existence.
But no, I would take Northern Iowa on the points, but obviously Nebraska to win. But I know Matt Rule said earlier this week that this team is going to be similar to probably what you're going to see with like Wisconsin, not Wisconsin now, but like Iowa or a more run type Big Ten team. Their leading running back has 315 yards through 2 games, and I think their backup also has like 140, 160 rushing yards. So like this is a run heavy team that Nebraska is going to play, and they're probably going to want to run the ball, kill the clock, give Nebraska not as much opportunity on offense. So this will be a very good test for the defense now, is against a more run-heavy team versus Colorado. That was definitely more spread, play action, get your ball to the receivers. Now, how does Nebraska kind of stack the box? How do you stop the run game against a team that's really good at running the ball? It's not as much as a walk. I mean, yes, they should walk in, take care of business, kick butt, and get out. As we know, Nebraska's history is not always the case, and especially against a Northern Iowa team that is fairly good in the FCS level. So it's not, playing like the FCS Midwest in college football 25 type team, but it's definitely a better, lower level competition that's walking into the stadium Saturday night. So despite it being like an inferior opponent, Nebraska's still going to need that nighttime atmosphere. Still going to need the fans on their side. Probably not going to be as crazy and hectic as it was for Colorado, but I still think they're going to need that energy when Northern Iowa's on offense and everything. But I agree, Nate. Just kind of would love to see the offense pick it up a little bit more, not have the second half struggles kind of lag into the first half of this game. And no notes on defense. Just kind of keep doing what you're doing, stop the run, and force them to make mistakes. And so far they've proven that. But as long as the offense takes care of business and you don't have to rely on the special teams as much to this game, Nebraska will probably win by close to 28, 30 points, but still think Northern Iowa covers, which again, an insane amount to cover if you're not like Georgia, essentially. If that's a Georgia line, then yes, I would hammer Georgia, but like we are not Georgia yet.
Yeah, and I'd say the only other thing I'd be worried about is just, I don't know, trap game vibes. And coming off of like
which if this was an 11 a.m. game,
of Colorado,
this would 100% be a trap game at 11 a.m. Thankfully, it's a night game at Memorial Stadium again. But doesn't mean it's not a trap game, but like it's less of a vibe than if it was an 11 a.m. BTA kickoff.
It definitely feels like one of those games where they need to get things going on offense quick and not, 3 and out here and Northern Iowa, gets a field goal, and like if they can just, assert some dominance in the first quarter, just kind of pull away like they should, I think it would go a long way. So
yeah, Zach, your keys.
Take care of business. I mean, it's one of those things where, and I know I just a little bit ago said Nebraska can't overlook a team or can't be one to just walk in on Saturday and be like, oh, we got this in the bag. And I don't think they will. My point being is that on paper, you should win this game handedly. Go do it. You know what I mean? Like I honestly, I really don't have any major keys to the game. I just want to see them do sound fundamental football. Just play the game like you have been the past 2 weeks. Clean up things that needed to be. This is a perfect game to be like, okay, we've worked on this for 2 weeks now, or in the off season. Like, let's clean up the penalties. Let's clean up some of the bad passes or the bad runs. Some stuff on defense. Just turn it. Let's this be the week. Turn it into a well-oiled machine.
Don't go into the third quarter with like a 10 to 14 point lead. Where the play could change it to a single score game. Like you don't want to have those vibes in the middle of the third quarter.
And I mean, to that point too, I think maybe I'm saying maybe it's something on like coaching too, where it's like if the team's playing well and they are starting to get that rhythm, even in the third quarter, even if we're up by a lot, it's like keep them in there for a while. Like start getting some of that conditioning in there for a full-time game. Like get them to keep playing to where come Illinois the week after, not that we can look past this game, but like you're starting to get to where you're playing four full quarters of football. I'm not saying that they should overlook UNI, but I think this is where you show like, yep, and also like show that you earned that, ranking, that 23 ranking.
Yeah. Predictions? think so.
Hmm.
As much as I want to go with the hot take of like 40-0, as much as I want to have that faith that we won't let up anything, I don't have that faith quite yet.
Well,
But-
I was going to say, I'll kick us off while you guys think, because
Yeah.
I wanted to start off by saying that Andy won the prediction last week. Again, this is why I don't gamble, because I am so
I'm
far off
too
of my
good.
guess. And it's just like, and the worst part is I'm looking at, and I remember
even know what I
saying
guessed.
27 seems high for Colorado, but it was going to be one of those things where, like, oh, Colorado they're going to come back in that garbage time. And not that Nebraska wouldn't keep. I didn't expect Nebraska defense to play so well when they did. I was like, holy shit.
Mhm.
Okay. Clearly, I should just learn to live with the faith. But anyway, I don't think they're going to cover the 30-point spread, but I think they're going to get close. And so I'm going to say 35-10 good guys.
Yeah. I'll go another 40-7 game. I think they have it in them to put up and cover.
This is the one where this is the game
Yeah.
where I do hope that I'm wrong and we do
Right.
just blow
Yeah.
the doors
Even though
off.
I'm clearly picking a score that they already did, but I think it's reasonable to do it again. I think they can do it again, even if the backups are in.
I'll go 38-3.
Okay.
I think defense is going to
I thought about doing 40-3 too, and I'm like, if I'm going to do 40-3, I might as well just pitch the shutout and just risk for it all. I think the 7 will kind of be what happened last week, is you give up that late game kind of second string touchdown type vibe.
That's why I went with 10.
Which again, you don't want to give up anything, but if you do it knowing your backups are in, it's like, it is what it is.
Well, then that gives something on the coaches to,
Mhm.
oh, you guys need to be better about this.
Mhm.
You might need to
Even
go
though
in.
you're second string, you could still
They
second
might
or
go
third
in
string,
still.
like you
Yeah.
act like you're gonna start every single game, type thing. And we know Rule's a master motivator in that. I have no issue with him getting the guys ready to play.
Well, it should be again another exciting weekend of football coming up, and yeah, hopefully Nebraska just kind of keeps on rolling, like you said, Zach. Just kind of plays like a number 23 team should, and vibes keep going well. So hopefully we can go into Big Ten play 3-0, and yeah, we thank you everyone for joining us for yet another week of the Sportsball Podcast.
Skurs by 90.
Always by 90.
Always by
Always
90.
by 90.
Go Big Red, and thank you again for tuning in to the Sportsball Podcast, your source for sports.